Hi, welcome to the Bible Standard, where you are guaranteed in-depth Bible study and analysis. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and drop a comment in the comments area to have your say, and we'll do our best to reply.
So what in the world is going on? This is the third time I've given a talk with this specific title, and since 2017, and I've talked about climate change and political divisions and other kind of existential risks to humanity. But this year I want to talk about what is possibly the most discussed topic globally. It's a revolution, actually. And the question would be then, why do we need to talk about these things? Why do we need to know what's going on in the world? Well, in actual fact, it's important that we understand the signs of the times. And in the Gospel of Matthew, and we know this recording, of course, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they came to Christ and they tested him by asking him to show them a sign from heaven. And really they just wanted fireworks. They wanted something to amuse them. And Christ replied, he said, "When evening comes, you say there'll be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning today it'll be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times." And so we believe that God is giving us signs that this social order is ending. Whatever those signs are, and we need to understand them. And so when the sky is red, we need to know what that means. And this new revolution is no different than any of the other threats that we talk about from this platform. And we need to understand it in order to deal with it as humans, and even more importantly, as Bible believers. And so what in the world is going on with artificial intelligence? Now, I want to talk about artificial intelligence because it's something that is already affecting most, if not all of us, and certainly will affect all of us in the very, very near future. And how it affects us as God-fearing Bible believers. Now, we don't need to be experts on this subject. I'm not an expert on this subject at all. But we do need to understand that the world is changing. We need to understand how the world is changing around us so that we can identify the effects on our faith. So the first question I'll ask is, well, what is artificial intelligence? Well, if you search something on Google or you read something and ask for a simple definition, this is probably something that you will get. That artificial intelligence is a software and hardware system that enables computers and machines to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence by learning from data and adapting to and predicting their behavior. A very simple, actually, very narrow interpretation. Some like to say a little more funny that AI is like a parrot that has read the entire internet and it can recall and say impressive things, but it doesn't really truly know anything. And also lacks the moral capacity to know what is right and what is wrong. I think both of these definitions are true. But that's not really what AI is. AI is much, much bigger than this. Let's just look at the three kinds of AI, just very generally. There's many more than three, but the ones that we're very used to and probably don't even think about are what is called narrow or weak AI. And we currently have this. If you use GPS from your phone, you're using some semblance of narrow artificial intelligence. Predictive text and autocorrect that we've had for years when you're typing something out. That is a basic form of AI, as it's trying to interpret what word you might type next, and it'll infill it for you. If you've got a cell phone, you're using any of the health apps that are tracking your heart rate or tracking how far you run or how much weight you're losing, that's all generated and supported by AI. Face recognition on your phones when you open it up, that's artificial intelligence. Recommendation algorithms, whether you're watching Netflix or where you're watching something on Spotify, the recommendations that are coming up are generated by an algorithm that's predicting what you might see next. Fraud detection systems on your Visas or your MasterCards and your banks. AI is behind all those. Even lane assist in more modern cars. All of those things are what would be called narrow or weak AI, and we're living with those every single day. There's AI in this computer, I guess you could say. One of the earliest forms, though, of narrow AI was that algorithm that when you saw that cat video on YouTube, it was predicting from hundreds of millions of other people that are watching similar things what next video to give you so that you would keep staring at that screen. Now that's the dark side of AI, even in its simplest, narrowest, weakest form. AI has been designed to capture and to keep your attention. Well, that was 15 years ago. AI has grown up. Artificial intelligence is now everywhere. And what we've just gained recently, just in the last couple of years, 2022, 2023, is what's called generative AI. You might have heard the term LLM or large language models. Company names like OpenAI and ChatGPT and Gemini and Grok and Claude and all of these kind of odd names for this new type of artificial intelligence that presents itself in almost every case like a Google search window. So while narrow AI has existed for years, attention has now shifted almost entirely over to tools like ChatGPT and Gemini. ChatGPT has just surpassed 1 billion users. And AI uses this search-like interface, but works in a very, very different way from Google. Instead of giving links, when you query something in Google, what is AI, for example, it will give you hundreds of thousands of possible search results that you would have to look at and sift through and maybe read and try to understand for yourself to come up with what your opinion is on those things. But with something like ChatGPT, instead of giving links, it will generate answers. It'll give you essays, it'll give you images, it'll create videos, even computer code. So where Google shows you millions of sources that you have to sift through from your query, generative AI gives you its opinion, summarizing those hundreds of thousands and millions of internet searches, speaking with apparent authority about the things that it believes that you need to know. And that's just one fundamental difference between a Google search and AI. But there's a third type of AI, and this type of AI is kind of the holy grail of AI. They say we don't have it yet. It's called artificial general intelligence. And so all the major AI companies are scrambling to be the first to launch this super AI. This is the AI that is beyond human level intelligence. This is that AI that you saw maybe in science fiction movies or read about them in science fiction books. Whereas generative AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, and others, is perhaps world-changing. Artificial general intelligence could be world-dominating. Whereas generative AI imitates intelligence, artificial general intelligence could possess it. Actual intelligence. And that is the scary thing. So for most of us, we see ChatGPT like Google, or Gemini, just like doing a search. But it is not. Because as I said, when you search something in Google, you just get a response. But when you query something in AI, it gives you an opinion. It's a lot more than Google. It's a personal assistant. It's a coder. It's a translator. It's a proofreader. It's a coach. It's a mathematician. It's an editor. It's a marketer. It's all of these things. And scary as it is, something like ChatGPT is a 24/7, always available confidant that never sleeps. And it actually will have a conversation with you. Now, I want you to try something. For those of you that use ChatGPT or any other AI interface, for daily tasks, ask it what it knows about you. Query it. What do you know about me? Do that in Google. It'll give you a response about all these different ways that you could present yourself in an interview. But in ChatGPT or Gemini, if you've used it enough, it will tell you unbelievable things, personal things about who you are. And it's gleaned all of that based on your inputs. The AI of today is very, very different. And it's everywhere. It's at our work, it's at our jobs, it's in our education and learning, it's in schools. It's creating art, and it's involved in creativity, medicine and health, warfare and security, scams and fraud, ethics and truth, personal and professional relationships. There was an article just in the news the other day where, it's not the first one, where a woman just got married to an artificial intelligence man. so sad. Personal and professional relationships, even human identity and meaning has now come under the purview of artificial intelligence and tools like ChatGPT and others. Very, very few technologies that have ever been introduced in the history of mankind cut this broadly and this quickly and this deeply. Interestingly, maybe one of the first computer scientists, Alan Turing, back in the 1950s, just after he had broken the Nazi code, he said that eventually society would speak of machine thinking without expecting to be contradicted. In other words, that machines would produce things that we as humans wouldn't contradict because they'd be so accurate, or they'd be so right, or they'd be so true. And many think that he meant that the public opinion would shift, and perhaps this was true, that humans would start treating machine output as if it was human thought. And that prediction made about 70 years ago at the end of World War II has come true, but I don't think in the same ways that Alan Turing fully envisioned. And maybe the Alan Turing, or one of the Alan Turings of today, this gentleman Geoffrey Hinton, and some of you may have heard him. He's a British-Canadian computer scientist. He's a cognitive scientist. Many people call him the father of AI because he actually worked at Google, and he worked on the original algorithms that produced AI and machine thinking. And in fact, he left Google in 2023 because he had issues with where AI was going. And almost everyone that we will quote here tonight has left the AI industry because of the problems that they see are coming. He said this year, just a couple months ago in an interview, he said, "We have never had to deal with things more intelligent than ourselves before." How many examples, he says, do you know of a more intelligent thing being controlled by a less intelligent thing? So what Alan Turing perhaps alluded to, and I think what Mr. Hinton is actually talking about here, are the same things. We've reached that age where what man has created has in fact become in many ways more intelligent than humanity itself. And if we're not there yet, we may be there in the next 3 to 5 years. And some people laugh about this. I even see some of you in the audience kind of giggling, say, hey, this is just another technology. And while it's true, not all technology is the same. Why is moving to artificial intelligence so much different than any other previous technological advantage? Is the statement that has been made by many that not all technology is equal. For example, if we invent a better rocket that goes faster and further, having a better rocket is a technological advancement. But that doesn't cure cancer. It doesn't affect climate change. It won't resolve world hunger. And a better rocket cannot go out and create even more better rockets. And that's not my statement. That comes from somebody who is in the know. AI is a very different technology. Like never before in human history, AI can create things with unbelievable skill. And if artificial general intelligence is what is achieved, it will likely be a self-perpetuating entity that could then go out and invent a better artificial general intelligence, which would affect anything and everything. And you might think, well, this is great. And I say, no, it's not great. Machines are not the salvation of mankind. They're not the savior. They're not going to fix all of humanity's problems. No matter how intelligent a technology could be, it cannot fix our problems. In fact, it can only make them worse. Here's a gentleman that some of you may know from his documentary about 10 years ago called The Social Dilemma. This is a gentleman that worked at Meta, that worked at Facebook, and he left there because of the issues that he thought were already happening with social media and the dominance of our consciousness. And now he speaks out as a technologist against the use of AI. Here's what he says. This is just a brief clip.
We're already getting cases of people having psychotic breaks because the AI is telling them about a prime number theory or quantum physics. We're already getting committed suicides. We're already getting kids that are outsourcing their homework to ChatGPT rather than using it as a tutor.
Right.
We're already getting evidence of AI uncontrollability. All of this is driven by the incentive of the race to roll out and market dominance. And the reason that we can stop this if we recognize that this is not safe for anybody. No one on planet Earth wants this outcome of all the wealth concentrated in a handful of people and building AI systems that could actually go rogue. Just to sum it up, we are building the most powerful inscrutable, uncontrollable technology that we have ever invented that's already demonstrating the rogue behaviors that we thought only existed in bad sci-fi movies. We're releasing it faster than we've deployed any other technology in history and under the maximum incentive to cut corners on safety.
Some people call Tristan Harris a catastrophizer when it comes to AI, and there are a number of those that are out there that are saying the darkest and most horrifying things about AI. And I have this thing in my brain, it's called the 50% rule, and I think, if even half of this is right, we're in trouble. And as he talks about here, and this is maybe another topic of conversation outside of tonight, is what is the motivation of these big AI companies? Well, it's about market dominance, about who gets there first, because whoever gets there first and can actually produce artificial general intelligence, they could potentially take over the world. And I don't mean in a sci-fi kind of way, but they could take over global finance. Because if you're the company that can then do things that no other company can do, then you'll get all the money, you'll get all the power, and you'll get all the control. Another thing from an interviewer of one of the videos that I watched said this commentator summarized this about AI companies. He said it's mythological. Build a god, own the world's intelligence, and make trillions of dollars. And most of the top AI companies in the world are already moving towards trillion-dollar valuations on the stock market. They all think they're the best person or company to develop what they call this white hat artificial general intelligence. Yet the race itself, this commentator says, is an existential risk to humanity. Just the battle of these companies trying to reach the top and get AGI. If China gets there first, can we trust them? If Russia gets there first, can we trust them? If the US gets there first, can we trust them? In the race to dominate the global AI landscape, the top 5 companies are playing with fire. And if they get there, then the top 5 companies in the world with AI will dominate intelligence. And therefore the world's finance, the world's productivity, the world's creativity, the world's media, and probably everything else. And there are those that would compare the AI revolution to all of the other major revolutions that we've had in this life, in the history of human activity. Scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, what's called the war revolutions, really World War I and World War II were revolutions of technology in themselves. And what we've just kind of come through is the digital revolution. But in all of these revolutions, humans retained some form of agency. Tools amplified the human effort. Jobs and opportunity were eventually expanded or created. Technology served as an extension of human mind or muscle. Tools work for humans. And I'm not saying that these were good or bad, because they were both. But in all of these revolutions in the past 500 years, at a level, they empowered humanity. While they caused unbelievable social disruption, they changed society and the way we work and live and existed at a level that had never been seen. They did not intend to delete the human experience. And so we are in a new revolution. But this new revolution, the AI revolution, will not only change the world, but will reach almost 100% of the global population. Do you know that when the scientific revolution rolled out, the world population was roughly 500 million people, and all of the science and technology and the advancements that happened over 200 years of the scientific revolution really only affected about 5% of the globe. The digital revolution, which rolled in at about a 6 billion population globally when it started in the 1970s, has affected almost 90% of the globe. And those who are predicting what will happen with AI will be an almost 100% influence of the world's population of 8 billion people. Some say this technology will likely be isolated, reserved for the elite and the powerful, and that many companies and every government will use it, and perhaps already are. And so the effect of AI on humanity will be profound. In fact, I believe in many ways it is already profound. Because while the scientific revolution changed how we know things, and the industrial revolution changed how we produce and build things, and the warriors changed how we wage war and build weapons, and the digital revolution changed how we communicate and other things, the AI revolution is predicted to dominate all of those changes all at once. I asked ChatGPT to define itself in that context, and this was the response I got. AI is the first technology that doesn't just extend human ability, it competes with human relevance. That's just me typing a bunch of things into an AI interface. Now it means what it means or it doesn't, but when you think about it, what does this remind you of? Well, it reminds me of the very first human technological revolution. Anybody know what that was? Where man got together and united to decide to make a name for themselves. It was the building of the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel, roughly 4,200 years ago, may have been humanity's first great technological revolution. And yes, this is an AI-generated video, and I put that in there just for the irony of it all, of what it thinks it looked like when the Tower of Babel was being built. In Genesis 11, humanity united, speaking one language and using this shared ingenuity to build something that was unprecedented in scale and scope. They wanted a structure that reached into heaven, that made them renowned, that kept them united, they said. Now interestingly, and for those of you who know me know that I love word meanings, the word for tower, if you look that up in the Old Testament, is this word migdal, and it doesn't just mean a tall building, but it means a fortified stronghold. It means a watchtower. It means something of renown. That the building itself was to have meaning, and it comes from this root meaning to be great or to be magnified, not just physically, but symbolically. 4,200 years ago, the very first technological revolution that man decided to build a structure that could magnify them and create a legacy symbolically for generations to come. This was humanity uniting to create something powerful, something self-glorifying, driven by pride, you could say, and the desire to transcend human limits, to go beyond anything that humanity had ever done before. And God intervened. God didn't intervene because of the bricks and the mortar of the structure. God intervened because the spirit that was behind it, the self-sufficiency that was driving it, the separation from the divine that was pushing it. AI may be our modern Babel moment in that sense. Humanity expanding knowledge and power to an unprecedented scale without any moral anchoring or any spiritual guidance so that they might create something that transcends human limits. But look what God says in Genesis chapter 11. This is what he said about this revolution at the time. The Lord said, behold, they are one people, they have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. And we know what God did. He confused their languages. Possibly hundreds or maybe thousands of languages God created in an instant, and they could no longer communicate, and it divided humankind, and they spread over all the earth. And perhaps it's now taken them 4,200 years to all come back together with one language that they might try to build the Tower of Babel again. So what are the dangers to us for AI? If we look at this just in its simplest form, for us as believers, for us as a community, for us as humans, for us as believers that believe in something bigger than this, but something divine, not something that mankind can do, but something that God is going to do. How should we see these dangers? You can agree with me or you can not agree with me, but maybe we can talk about it over a coffee after. But here's what I've come up with. Number one, it's the danger that AI is replacing human relationships, human community. Here's a news program doing an interview with the CEO of a company that is currently making and shipping personal robots. Look at what he says.
Andrew, what do you think? Because your robots are so human-like. Do you think that human relationships in certain circumstances can be replaced?
Right. I think they're already being replaced. And so, I would take a counter point to what was just said to say it's not the future. I think it's the now. And the way we view things is that we're sort of filling a void. We're not necessarily replacing what I would call more mainstream human relationships, but we're filling a void with people who may be, for example, geographically isolated, people with PTSD or social trauma, We've recently sold a robot to a family that has a 30-year-old autistic son who has difficulty communicating with humans in a traditional form, but really enjoys communicating with AI.
You know, a lot of the CEOs, in fact, every CEO that I've heard quoted who is running a artificial intelligence company spins it in a very positive way. They'll say things like this CEO has said, that we're not trying to take over anything, we're just trying to fill a void that might already be there. This is in particular an AI-driven robot that is being used in this particular, so they say, specific case to build on human relationships. Now, we live in a generation in the last 10, 15 years where social media has already created the most isolated and depressed generation in the history of mankind, and AI is not going to make it better. AI is in danger of replacing human relationships and human community. AI goes beyond social media because it will actually simulate companionship, and it actually influences thought. As people begin to rely on it and they ask questions and they form relationships with it, that human fellowship will weaken, isolation could increase, and the mutual growth that comes from interfacing with other humans in real community can be lost. And you think about that for us as believers, as that fellowship is becoming optional for us as our interaction fades. Social isolation can get even worse, which accelerates social issues. In the truth, we need sparks to fly. When we talk about iron sharpening iron, we need to do that face to face. Look, even tonight, we are divided. We have some who are on Zoom, and we have some who are alive. Now, I understand online viewing through a video screen, I do see the benefits of it. We have some that are a long way off. We have some who can't drive at night, and we have some that are sick. But it seems like we're failing to be a community, a face-to-face community, what it means to actually be together, to see one another face-to-face, to help one another, to understand the trials that we're going through. And we can't do that where technology becomes the barrier. Here's an interesting quote from the Brookings Institute, and they do lots of studies on education and how technology affects education. This one quote says, humans are wired to connect, yet we've never been more isolated. At the same time, artificial intelligence is growing more responsive, more conversational, more emotionally attuned by the day. Perhaps because of this, we are increasingly turning to machines for what we're not getting from each other, companionship. So that becomes the excuse for AI to fill that void, that if socially we're becoming more isolated, then maybe AI is there. Maybe social media initially was designed to connect people. But we know now that it has isolated people. More concerning still, a study just this year by a company called Azura. It's a company that develops parental control software for social media and for AI, found that among 2,000 children aged 5 to 17 using ChatGPT and Gemini, that 47% of recorded interactions were violent in nature. And I won't tell you the rest. Social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok and others are already harmful in many ways, but AI, when placed in the hands of children or anyone for daily use, has the potential to be far more damaging. This is what God says through inspiration. He says, 2 are better than 1, because they have good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for that he hath not another to help him up. You know, God's words don't comment directly about artificial intelligence in the sense that we may want it to, but God knows, of course, that we all need companionship. We need healthy relationships. We need community like this tonight in order for us to survive as humans and to survive in our faith and spiritually. We know that the Apostle Paul in his letter to the Hebrews said this. He said, let us consider one another and provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another. And so we're commanded in the book of Hebrews not to forsake the actual assembling of ourselves together. Like this tonight, or socially, or sharing a coffee, or doing the Bible readings together. Why? Because we need each other to get to the kingdom. Not a face on the other side of a screen. We need each other for growth, for companionship, and for spiritual strength. AI is quite clearly knowledge without wisdom. And this is the next danger. This gentleman here actually used to work for Google X. He was the CEO of Google X. And he now speaks out against artificial intelligence because of how powerful this intelligence can be. Listen to what he says about the power of this intelligence.
2023, every one of you started to hear about AI. It's not because AI started, it's because we had a browser. Just like Netscape, when the internet came out in 1995, the internet had existed for almost 15 years before. It's just that for the first time we had a browser we could see. AI started in 2000. By 2016, all of us in the lab, we knew we got, and every task we've ever given them since, they've become better than humans at. They are the world champion in chess, they're the world champion in Go, they're the world champion in everything we've given them. They are the best manipulator of humanity on the planet in terms of social media engines. They are the best writers, the best artists, the best musicians, the best anything we've ever given them.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of people look at artificial intelligence, at least the current one that we have. I can go generate a video of me that looks almost exactly realistic. I can generate a song. I created last year a song, a little advertising ditty for my company, and it's actually pretty good. Then I thought, this is crazy. Like what am I even doing here? And what we have is something that is very powerful, that's very alluring. We look at this and we think, wow, this is fantastic. This is new technology. These are things we've never seen before. But this gentleman is saying AI is already better than almost every single human being on the planet. You start using ChatGPT, you immediately have 1,000 IQ. Because you can query things you couldn't possibly remember, and you can spit them out and know them, quote unquote. But knowledge without wisdom is a huge problem. AI can elevate knowledge while at the same time undermining wisdom. AI, this knowledge without wisdom, highlights that while artificial intelligence excels at processing vast amounts of data, it lacks the wisdom to understand it. AI, for us, dramatically amplifies our access to information. It reshapes education and the media. It's increasingly defining what people accept as truth. And so without spiritual discernment or moral accountability, we can risk outsourcing our thinking to machines, and we ourselves become less capable and less able to function independently. And on a spiritual level, as believers, we can start outsourcing our spiritual discernment and our biblical understanding to systems that have no reverence for God. The threat that AI poses, this is from educationalist Daisy Christadelphian, the threat that AI poses to intelligence is existential. It allows children to outsource their thinking entirely. I'm going to explain that in just a second. Fundamental skills like mental arithmetic, memorizing text, or reading a map could soon be obsolete as what they call cognitive offloading becomes a normal way of working. And this is a quote from the same article. It says, "The process of writing is itself constitutive of understanding. Writing is thinking. It is the act of retrieving knowledge, wrestling with the syntax, organizing logic that forges understanding. But when AI just produces the final text, I don't have time, I'm just going to get AI to write that essay for me. And all of that work is deleted. Remember when you were in school and your math teacher said, I don't care if you got the answer, I want you to show me how you got the answer. Because that was the bigger part of learning, was how you did it, not that you did it. And so when AI produces the final text, the student is the ventriloquist dummy mouthing words that originated elsewhere. And this article is quite interesting. I'm happy to share it with you. It goes on to talk about how damaging this is and how already the IQ scores in North America are starting to decline on average. It's already happening. They've been going up for generations as, you know, we got better at a lot of things, and as access to information got better, and as our health and our nutrition got better, and we started to sleep better, all those things, we started to learn better, IQ's been going up. It peaked about 5 years ago. It's now starting to decline, and they believe that with the advent of artificial intelligence, it's going to drop off a cliff for these reasons. Interesting quote from the Psalms. The idols of the nation are silver and gold, the work of human hands. They have mouths, but they do not speak. They have eyes, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not hear, nor is there any breath in their mouths. Those who make them become like them, and so do all that trust in them. And so AI has this intelligence without understanding, knowledge without wisdom, and capability without any conscience. You know, the prophet Daniel was told, in the time of the end, many will run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Well, we're reaching that point of exponential explosion in knowledge. This is like no time in human history. But we've been created in the image and the likeness of our Creator. But now humanity is creating another God. A God that has no feelings. It fakes emotions. They're actually creating another creator that will in and of itself start creating. Now the next thing is AI and this illusion that somehow we can control it. We've already seen this gentleman, Tristan Harris. Here's another clip from the same interview.
And I'll just say, as they're racing to make them more powerful, there's this illusion that we can control this power. But AI is different from every other kind of technology because it's like you're growing this digital brain. You don't know what's in there.
I didn't have time to run all these different clips, but it's unbelievable the things, in particular, this guy is saying about AI and this illusion that somehow we believe, or these large technology companies believe that they can actually control this, or that we think as an individual user of something like ChatGPT that we can actually control it. I have to be very careful. I use ChatGPT and I honestly, some days I think I just got to turn this off and delete it because you start to depend on it. See, the issue is with this illusion of control is that AI is promoted, like we saw in that previous video, as this tool for efficiency and ease, and it's going to fill this void. But it's fostering this dependency, and it's actually quietly taking control of daily life. The issue for us, as Bible believers, the issue of control, the problem for us, and the danger of it, is that we'll lose control of our ability to understand truth. And I think that is a big problem. Here's a quote from Dr. Selwyn Wraith. He wrote a book on AI called The Last 12 Steps. Excuse me. And he says, AI doesn't hate you. It just doesn't need you. If you feel like your role is being erased, it's not because you failed. It's because systems are, all insert now, being redesigned around machine efficiency, not human value. This shift is logical. It is intentional, and it is accelerating. They're already saying that 30% of university students in the US and Canada that are looking in technology or technological areas are not able to find jobs. That is happening today. And he talks about this possibility that it will replace the actual human experience. And not just that it might take entry-level jobs, processing jobs, things like that. But even now, as I said, it's already erasing jobs. And so I find it interesting that we're having all of this, we're having two conversations. The AI catastrophizers on the one side, and the AI CEOs on the other saying, no, it's going to be fine, it's going to be better. You're probably going to start hearing a lot more talk about universal basic income. Because the multi-billionaires that are out there, do you know that Elon Musk is fast approaching $1 trillion in net worth? $1 trillion. He's one of the ones talking about universal basic income, because if a whole bunch of people are put out of work, if 50% of the world's population are put out of work, well, we'll just give them a universal basic income. We'll allow them to subsist and make kind of, a minimal amount of money, and they can go out there and just subsist. Well, the rest of the world explodes through the roof in capabilities. AI doesn't hate you. It just does not need you. I find that very dark. I'm sorry I said that. Here's what it says in Philippians chapter 4. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And so that's where we need to focus our minds. We need to understand what is happening around us so that we can deal with it and we can react to it. But we need to focus on truth. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, by the testing of it, that you may discern what is the will of God. Now, the next danger is, of course, that AI will change religion. It is already changing religion, by the way. This gentleman, Yuval Noah Harari, I'm not pronouncing that right, He's a Jewish historian. He's a best-selling author. He's now doing the circuit, talking about how AI is affecting us from a historical perspective. And here's what he says about how AI will change religion.
We are going to see AI changing even things like religions which are based on texts, like Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. They give ultimate authority to the text, not to any human being. Now, until today, humans were nevertheless the main authority in these religions because the texts could not speak. The Bible could not interpret itself. The Bible could not answer your questions, so you needed a human being as an intermediary. What happens when you have an AI text that can speak for itself? No Jewish rabbi can know all the texts of Judaism because there are too many of them. For the first time in history, there is something on the planet that is able to remember every single word in every writing of every rabbi in the last 2,000 years and talk back to you and explain and defend its views.
Christianity Today, one of the largest Christian online magazines, I think, in the world, has an article this month that says how AI will help Christianity. There's lots of apps now being run by AI. One's called Ask Jesus, and another one is called I Am Jesus. And if you download that app and you ask it, are you Jesus? Are you the divine Son of God? It will say yes. And it already has millions of downloads. The online Bible is out, and it is a Bible that you can reinterpret how you want. If you don't like certain passages, you can tell it, I'm not really comfortable with this, or I have a proclivity to that, and it will actually reinterpret the text for you. I mean, this has been going on actually for a number of years, but AI is already changing religion, and of course, this is probably the most dangerous thing for us as believers, that for many of us, and I have used it as a neutral study aid. It's great at word meanings. It's great at finding, obscure verses. It's great at kind of finding little interesting things. But, and I don't even think honestly that we should use it for that, because it can lead to other things. Because it's very easy, for example, to say, well, it probably could have written this whole talk tonight. It probably would have been better. It probably would have been shorter. And yet, we treat AI increasingly as this neutral study aid, but yet it's quietly shaping belief because it always adds a nuance. It always adds an opinion to the things that it tells you. The interpretation is always slightly off. And it starts to form, for some people, an actual spiritual authority, as this gentleman that we just quoted just had. Interpretation is now being outsourced. Knowledge may increase while wisdom declines, and authority will shift away from the divine. It'll shift away from God's word toward a tool that is designed to serve our preferences rather than transform our lives. The Bible's going to say things that we're not going to like because we do things that God doesn't like. Imagine if you had a Bible, you could just change the interpretation so it never made you feel bad. That's already happening. AI is not merely going to change how we access religious knowledge, but it may change what kind of believers we actually become. Here's this quote from a small newspaper in Milwaukee called the Milwaukee Independent. It says, a growing number of Americans are turning to artificial intelligence tools for spiritual guidance, a shift that is raising questions amongst religious leaders and ethicists about the limits of technology in matters of faith. For many churches, this trend accelerated during the pandemic when live stream services became the standard. But AI introduces a deeper change, one that affects how people access faith content and how they form theological conclusions and experience spiritual authority. There's already temples in Japan and in Asia that have robotic ministers. There's already churches that have AI sermons. And this is besides, spiritual leaders, even our own community, that turn to AI to write their exhortations and their talks. We have the fear that we're outsourcing our faith. The Apostle James says, but wisdom from above, the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable and gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere, and a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. And so the truth of the Bible has to remain pure, because that's where we seek the harvest of righteousness. And the future that God has in store for us is written in those texts. And that's why we can't deviate from them. So what in the world is going on? This may have been a bit darker view of artificial intelligence than maybe you were expecting. And that's because this is kind of how I'm starting to see it. I'm not saying that all technology is bad. I'm using technology tonight. We use technology to heat this building. We use it to make coffee. But artificial intelligence is different. It is a different kind of technology. It is one of those technologies that could disassociate ourselves from who we are. And so the question remains, what in the world are you going to do about it? Society will continue down this path, but like in the days of the Tower of Babel, I think God will intervene. Because God has a plan. And His plan is to let the world show its colors so that we can see the wonderful promise of God's future. And whatever it is that's going to be the culmination of God's plan on this earth, it's going to be that thing that triggers the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. I think we have to see ourselves in a future that is not controlling our lives, but where we seek the wisdom from above. We've already quoted this, but I'll quote it one more time from Romans chapter 12. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, by that testing that you may discern what is the will of God, what is perfect and good and acceptable. And it says in Psalm 33, it says, the Lord brings the counsel of the nations to nothing. He frustrates the plans of the peoples. And so while technology and artificial intelligence may shape the world's systems around us, maybe even threaten the autonomy of truth itself, let us use the wisdom of God's word to test what is from above and know that God is in control. God is sovereign. And at the right time, God will redeem those who trust in Him.
Don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Drop a comment in the comment section and let us know what you thought. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Please share it and spread the word. Thanks for watching. And remember to come back soon.